At some point, everyone has to deal with difficult coworkers. And so in this podcast, we're going to talk about how you deal with them. What do you do? What are the best ways to approach difficult coworkers? And how do you get what you want without making someone else feel bad about it? So joining me today is Executive Leadership Coach of the Year, Dr. Jeff Kaplan. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you, Raj. Great to see you and be here.
Well, let's get right into it. Dealing with difficult people, it's not something everybody enjoys doing. I mean, it's like sometimes you just avoid dealing with people. Tell me about what causes that tension, and then what do you do about it?
All right. Could you give me an example of a difficult situation that you're dealing with, and then I'll answer both those questions.
One of my very first jobs, I remember I worked at an agency from the Department of Commerce, and we used to get lots of dignitaries coming in, including people like the Department of Commerce secretary, to come in and take a look at what we were doing in our research. And I remember one time waiting in the lab along with another person who was much senior to me, and he didn't do his homework. He asked me, "So what are you going to talk about, Raj?" And I told him everything I was going to say. So when the Secretary of Commerce came in, they went to the senior leader first, and he said everything that I had prepared. And then said, "Okay, now on to you, Raj." And I just looked at him and I thought, I was not happy. I was very upset. I didn't know how to deal with it. I was in my early 20s. What would you advise somebody in that kind of situation?
I would have said, actually ditto with what this person just said, because that's exact talking points I just gave him right before the call.
Or
I
would you
think he
say
said
that
it
to like the
brilliantly.
Secretary of Commerce?
So look, I'm telling you as a word of advice, you want to make people above you look good. And yes, you want to not make anybody wrong, which is actually my first principle of dealing with difficult problems. But the issue is the situation that you were in, you're younger, he's taking advantage of you, this and that. He didn't warn you. It'd almost be one thing if you weren't on the call. If you weren't on the call and he took all your stuff and then just made it his, very different approach.
Very different. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just like, okay, this and that. But he made you look like an idiot. He pushed it. He made
did.
you look like an idiot. And I would say, yeah, actually very much did it with so-and-so what they said. In fact, there's an exact talking points, I gave him. I'll give you the copy when we get off, but love the way that you said it. So-and-so, you enunciated far better than I'm sure I could have. So I'm really glad that you asked me for your talking points. I think that was really helpful. The only thing maybe I would add for now in terms of what we already talked about, in addition to what so-and-so kind of repeated, would be X. So what did I just do there? If you're going to, it's one thing to take my stuff. It's another thing to try to make me look like an idiot in front of folks because you didn't prepare. Right.
And you would do that even to
So
someone who's more senior than you also?
yeah, he's done it before. That's his profile. Other people have experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. You just nailed him. You just said, don't do that in public again. I'm going to call you out. But what you said, by the way, he said it much more eloquently than I'm sure that I could have. Right. That's a weird jujitsu move where you're kind of like acknowledging him in the moment so you don't look like the victim and, it's all about me, but you're claiming your space. And you reinforce 3 times that it was your stuff. And it's like, what was just repeated. But then what you're doing is you're quickly pivoting to because everyone's trying to figure out, wait, what just happened? And you're like, the only thing I could add, and you better come up with something just really quickly. It could be almost anything. But it's enough to just move the conversation in a forward direction rather than getting this weird stuck point about what just happened. That person learned never to do that again with you. Other people that listened, don't ever do that to Raj. He will call you out on it. You probably just gained credibility with a lot of people that person does it to. You definitely lost a friend. This person is never going to support you anywhere. But if you're not willing to be courageous in the workplace, and particularly at that age, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I know. I didn't actually do all those things because when I was in my early 20s, I was very shy. And, growing up in an Indian family, you end up with the mindset of respecting elders, regardless of whether they're your family or anywhere else.
Right.
And so sometimes there's cultural things that also inhibit you, I should say, from standing up and taking that stand to the background.
So I can't tell you how many folks whose birthplace was in India and who are now working in the US. On their first coaching session, when we're talking about goals, they said, I want you to teach me I want you to Americanize me, right? And every time, Raj, what they mean is I want you to teach me how to be more direct, including to my superiors.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that because a lot of Asian cultures, a lot of other cultures have that as,
1000%.
when you're brought up. And that kind of, I think, uh, that actually shapes how you deal with some difficult people. Let's go into a different scenario. So I remember another time, and there was one person who had kind of gotten a reputation of being a difficult person. I didn't have to deal with her as much, but a couple of the other team members did. And they were afraid to talk to her because they were afraid she was going to just chew their head off about anything. How do you deal with someone like that where they're just hard to talk to because they're always on edge and they might blow up at you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And particularly in today's environment, you have to be very careful. So the first thing I would ask myself is, you know what the message is, right? But who's the messenger, right? And so that's a situation where, depending on the size of the company and the structure of the company, it could potentially be the manager as part of a kind of feedback, like a performance review or what have you. It could be HR, particularly if the HR can say, we've gotten some complaints, right? It could be another female leader in the company, sort of at your level or higher, right? Like not at her level, who could speak that you could trust, right? And sort of, you have to be careful here, but to kind of like, have you noticed? I think someone should say something, but I think it could come across not well for me. So that's that issue, right? I have had 360s where someone got the feedback. I've done 360s, right? Interviewing folks that work with someone. And it was that this woman dressed provocatively, right? And it came from a couple of people. So I'm the coach, right? So I'm the outside person giving feedback. One of the pieces of feedback here is this. That's where it gets tricky. I'm the one that's sharing the news.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm making up about this is she's feeling insecure about her role or her ability to perform. For this person, does that seem accurate?
Um, I think so, and I've actually dealt with a lot of other people who are insecure about the way they perform. They may be performing, and they kind of overcompensate in terms of bravado, and I've seen this across so many different types of people. It is not gender specific. It is not background specific. There's just some people that are like that, and so yeah, I think this particular person I'm thinking about right now was like.
So, what's fun about people who bring bravado to cover up some insecurity is, the way to their heart. Look at the current president of the United States, right? Look at when that person travels to different countries. They just know, oh, this is easy, right? And just tell the person you're amazing at this. By feeding this false sense of ego, it gives you permission to then, in a more strategic way, influence them to get what you need to get done. The other thing I would say, though, from a sort of HR perspective, is this person should definitely get a 360 done, meaning anonymous feedback from people, her coworkers, people that she reports to, people that she's peers with, and people that report, if anyone, below her, right? And that's a great way to raise awareness with someone who doesn't even see it.
And would you say the best way to handle something like this, where you're bringing a 360 in, would be to say, "Hey, everybody on the team is doing a 360, so that person doesn't feel isolated"?
Well, there has to be a reason for it, though. If there's good management, the manager can say, look, as part of your development, I think it would be really good for you to get a 360, and maybe say at some point, bring it to others. I mean, I've definitely had people who brought me in who said the same thing, like, I really want you to do a 360 in this person, but could you, we'll tell them we're going to do it to everybody, right? I want you to do it to everybody. That's that we're not single. And that's fine, but it's also, it's like you're in an organization where it's not psychologically safe to be honest with each other, and where the manager is lacking some good management skills. If somebody is underperforming, or if they're creating disruptions in the workplace, or if their presence is a distraction, then that manager needs to learn skills and how to give feedback, right? It starts with, how would you like feedback? Direct report, right? what works, what doesn't work. The person that you're describing is the kind of person that could do really well 90% of the feedback, but will get really upset about that one little piece of feedback that they don't like. And so what you would say is, if I have to give you some critical feedback, how do you want to hear that?
What are some of the other things that people should prepare for if they're gonna have to have discussions with difficult people?
Well, when I think about difficult conversations, conflicts, difficult employees, leaders, there are three principles that I find myself repeating a lot. That just that sort of ended up saying in the work that I do. The one that's coming to me right now, and I'm happy to share the other two, assume good intent. Sally did not wake up in the morning and say, I just can't wait to ruin Roger's day. Sally's waking up probably feeling a little bit insecure about her place at work, probably a little bit isolated, a little bit concerned about her skill set, right? Maybe she's got a 2-year-old at home that was giving us a hard time, and maybe the marriage is having difficulties, right? So she's got a lot of stuff going on. So then she comes to work, right? She's already on sort of a quarter of a tank of gas, right? And she's starting to see the world through everyone's out to get me, right? Everyone's against me. So if you assume good intent, right? What that means, Raj, is you don't personalize it. First thing you need to do is not make it about you. So as you to pull out the emotional charge, right? Because here's what happens. She says, she said it to you. I know you said you didn't have to work with her much, but let's say it was you. She says something like, very attacking and defensive. And you're thinking, what a jerk, right? And then you're starting to have judgments about her. And then you're responding in a way that is going to only reinforce the issue that you have. So if you assume good intent, then you basically try to get clarity about what was behind that. So let's say that she said, I don't know, I think I did better at this than you.
Well, let's
I'm
let's
trying to think
presume
of
that let's presume that she finished a project, and the work wasn't quite where we needed to be, even after having a discussion about what the deliverables were supposed to be. And so you have to have a difficult conversation around that.
So she didn't deliver.
The level of quality that was expected.
Okay. Now, who are you? Are you a peer or are you her manager?
Well, let's say it's a peer, because sometimes those are the harder conversations.
I was going to say.
Yeah, and when you're a manager, just that lack of parity in where you are in the company, you do have the ability to provide a little bit more. Hopefully, it's coaching, and so yeah, let's say it's a peer, because that makes it hard.
So one of the things that often happens, and in some ways was about to happen here, is that teams work together without any ground rules. They jump in, they start playing a game of Monopoly, but nobody actually read the ground rules. And so without ground rules, you're basically setting yourself up and everyone else up for unnecessary conflict. So what I would say is, if we could go back in time, if we can't, I'll tell you what to do in the moment. But if you can go back in time, and you're about to begin on a project, the first thing I'd want to know is, like, what does success look like to you? Like, do you care? Is it important for you to do a good job? And then also, where do you think that you're strong in terms of what you can bring to the project, right? Now, again, they may have an inflated view, but then where do you think you're weak, right? And then, also, we're going to probably give each other feedback. What's a good way to do that, right? And so can we create a space, throughout the project, and certainly towards the end before we turn it in, to give each other feedback? I think really good, and this is not good, and then explain why, and then work together to see how you can help each other improve the outcome of it. So think we instead of you versus me.
Okay, I like that. We instead of you versus me. That's pretty important when you're trying to actually build a team as well. And let's use a different scenario where you were once a peer with a whole group of people. Your supervisors thought you were doing fantastic, and they've now promoted you, and now you are managing the group that you were once part of. This is difficult on many levels because people feel very uncomfortable. Wait a minute, you were my friend and now you're my boss. The relationship dynamics change completely. From that, how do you deal with a situation like that?
Right. Well, where I thought you were initially was, the skill set it takes to be, go from an individual contributor to a manager, very different, right?
Mhm.
And so it's without the right kind of support or modeling, it's very easy to fail. But
Yeah.
in terms of the dynamic, they call it, peer-to-supervisor, right? So in terms of the dynamic of like, yesterday we were peers and, we were, out having dinner and drinks and, making negative comments towards management. And now you're my supervisor.
Mm.
Isn't that fun?
Mm.
Right. And so the first thing you do is you set up your first meeting and you're like, well, literally you call that out. You say, just last week we were peers and now I'm your supervisor. Like, isn't this fun and interesting? So what I'd want to know is what excites you and what makes you nervous about that. And then let me share with you what excites me about being a manager and what makes me nervous about it. Two of the things I often hear, Raj, one of the things that excites them is like they know the person really well, right? Because the person opened up to them in ways they probably wouldn't have with somebody that came in as a manager, right? And so they might also know their strengths and weaknesses, and maybe they're even friends with them. What scares them is exactly what I just said. It's the same thing that excites them, is that they're friends with them and they're nervous generally about holding them accountable. And so that, if that's the case, that should come up in the conversation, which is like, I've had this happen with people. I'm a little bit nervous about how I should hold you accountable, right? And, you know, and I may have a tendency not to. So I want you to call me out. I'm going to work on, holding you equally accountable to your peers, right? But I want you to call me out if you feel like I'm being too harsh on you or not harsh enough. Um, and so you just have a transparent conversation. If there was a title for a lot of what we're talking about, it's transparency. What you're thinking in your head, open it up and invite the other person into that conversation, right? Without judging, without blaming, just a conversation. Here's what I'm noticing. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm feeling. What about you?
What are some other types of difficult people that people listening might be able to identify with? And then how do you deal with those?
Well, one of the types of difficult, I mean, there's a lot, but so far we've mentioned the person that lacks self-awareness, the person who is arrogant at sort of a defensive thing.
Mhm.
There's the person who everybody knows is underperforming, but the manager won't do anything about it. And there could be a lot of reasons for that.
Mhm.
You and your buddies are picking up the slack. So nobody's even seeing it, the poor
True.
performance, but you're feeling this is unfair. And that's sort of unsustainable. I had a situation when I was in business school, right? So there was teams of 5, and I was in a team of 5, and we're all equal, right? And we had an underperformer, right? There was a banker, an engineer, me, a psychologist, one other person who I think came from marketing, and this other person, right? And there was a lot of talent on that team. So, the banker was in finance also. Like those two people really brought a lot to the table. And I just a hard worker, so I brought a lot to the table. What I did is I pulled this person aside. We'll call him John. And I said, John, what's going on? I mean, we're entering our 3rd project together, and I'm concerned about your pulling your weight. And I'm concerned that the other people on the team, I kind of like, pointed it at them. I said, I'm concerned the other person, the other people on the team are going to feel not good. What do you want to do? And how, and here's the key, Raj, how can I support you? Right. And so again, it's the we, not you versus me, right? Don't make people wrong. Just ask for what you want. So there's a tendency to like, have these, toxic side conversations. What do do you believe John, like he's not even carrying his weight? Rather than going to John, just sharing the concern, asking for what you want, right? And then saying, how can I support you? And so I had to circle back. So, all right, where are we here? And then he pulled his weight, right? We had a marketing project and, he did a lot of the heavy. I guarantee you 100% he would not have pulled his weight if we continue to allow him
Mhm.
to slack, because that would be passively accepting his underperformance.
And I think that point is interesting because there are a lot of times people will just say, "Oh, I'll just take care of it." And we just
Correct.
allow that behavior to continue. So if I hear what you're saying, You actually have to have the courage to step up and have that difficult conversation so that the behavior doesn't continue.
That's right. And people that are high achievers, a lot of times it's easier to do it yourself than it
Yeah.
is to try to get someone else to do it.
Yeah.
So that's their natural strength. But also, quite frankly, let's be honest, they avoid confrontation and they're just hoping it kind of goes away. Newsflash, it's not going away. If there's a conflict and it's not addressed, it's not going away. It's only going to get reinforced. If there's underperformance and it's not addressed, it's not going away. It's definitely going to continue because you're passively saying this is okay. And the longer you wait, the weirder it is to have the conversation to say like, you're kind of underperforming here. I don't know. I've been doing the same thing for 9 months. What's wrong now?
There's a long-term effect of this too, and that is, if you as a manager just deal with this, then you're thinking, well, I'm going to just eventually leave. You leave, and it's someone else's problems. Well, that behavior is now someone else's problem. They come in and they see someone who they don't know how they got this way, but they're definitely a low performer out
Yeah.
there.
Not to mention the fact that there's something in the system that is allowing that to happen,
Mm,
right? So the person that comes in is kind of set up to underperform,
yeah.
right? It's a systemic issue, right? And so you have to look at not just the person, but what's in the process that supports that and really address that. But going back to the person, so you're like, okay, so I'm picturing, it's underperform. I'm trying to, nip this in the bud early. What do I actually say? And I give you the example of, John, I called him. But, it starts with an honest conversation one-on-one with the person. Hey, I just wanted to check in. How are you doing? Address the person first. And this is what the manager should do as well. Because you never know. And they say, oh, everything's fine. And you said, are you sure? And they say, yeah, why? And you're like, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're here because you have a lot of talent and a lot to bring to this project and to this team. And I just feel like you're not bringing your B plus game, much less your A game. And
Mm.
I just wondering if there's anything you need, if there's, as your peer, if there's anything I can do to support you. And you notice, like right now, I'm still being very friendly. And if they keep saying, then you just got to crank it up a little bit, right?
Mm.
And whether it's in that same conversation or the next couple conversations, you start cranking it up. I'm not okay with the level of contribution you made. And if you're saying that you are okay with it, then look, maybe I'm wrong. In which case, if you're saying that you're okay with it and there's nothing I can do to support you so that we're all kind of pulling our weight equally, then let's go ahead and let's all get together and meet with the manager, right? Well, let's have an honest conversation and share what we're each contributing and then figure out if I'm wrong. I'll be the first to admit it. I don't like the way it's going. I'm not okay with it. We need to do something, whether it's something I can help you with or something you can look internally, or if you think I'm just way off, then great. Let's go ahead and have so you notice what I'm doing, Raj, is I am not letting this person get away with it. I'm like, oh, maybe it's me. Maybe it's me. Like if it's me, like, let's go ahead and have this fight. Let's go ahead and meet with the manager and the rest of the team. Right. By the way, you should then get with the rest of the team and make sure that you have the support that you need. Because if you then all meet with the manager and they all like, you want to avoid conflict. So it's their turn to speak and they look the other way.
Yeah. And so what do you say to that person who is looking at themselves in the mirror in the morning, getting ready and saying, today's the day I'm going to have that conversation. And then they get to work and I'm not going to do it today. They chicken out and they want to do it. They want to have that conversation, but they just can't summon the strength to have it.
Right. Well, what they're nervous is because they haven't had it yet. And so they're afraid they're going to make it worse. People don't want to be judged, right? So rather than judging, you basically, make an observation and ask for what you want. What I would say is role play. So you can use my new role play app, Difficult Conversations app.
Yeah.
Right. You can use that to role play, use AI to role play.
Yeah.
Right. You can role play with a coach, right? Say it out loud 3 times. Say it with someone else. so that the time you're meeting with this person, it's not the first time you had it.
That's a great idea. That's a great use case for AI, by the way, is just to have it role play being that difficult person. Tell it, you're going to be a difficult person to me, and I'm going to have that conversation with you. So, and then I think there's voice mode, so you can actually just have it as an interactive conversation. So, fantastic. What other tips do you have for people who have to deal with difficult people?
Yeah, so I said earlier about not judging, right? And so, obviously, when we get frustrated, it's not because of what someone did or said, it's because of our interpretation of what they did or said.
Mm.
By the definition, that equals judgment, right? So we're feeling frustrated or angry or whatever we're feeling because of what we judge about that other person. And so we have a tendency to try to address the issue. We have a tendency to go right to the judgment, right? Like you are being a jerk or you are, whatever. Instead of sharing the judgment, you share the observation, stick to the facts, and then you ask for what you want. You get curious and ask for what you want. So you get curious, meaning, I wonder why. I wonder why this person who generally performs well is now underperforming. I wonder why they keep coming in late. Maybe because that's how they did it in their old job. Like, time was not really an issue. People didn't get serious until 15 minutes in the meeting. Rather than judging somebody based on your own principles, figure out why they acting a certain way. And then if you want something different, ask for it. If there was a few things I want people to take away, it's this idea of not judging, get curious. Ask for what you want, right? Don't judge, just ask for what you want. Can you make sure to start the meetings on time, whatever that is? Don't avoid conflicts. Don't avoid underperformance because you're passively accepting that that's okay, right? And when it comes to dealing with difficult people, remember, assume good intent. They're not waking up in the morning and saying, I can't wait to mess up Roger's day.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say there, just real quick to put a period on this, you asked about, like, so they wake up in the morning and they're ready to have the conversation and they don't do it, right? And I said, okay, well, if you role play, because they're nervous about doing it. The thing I want that person to remember is the reason that you're nervous about doing it is because one reason, you're afraid you're going to make it worse. If you knew you were going to make it better, then great. The reason that you think you're going to make it worse is because it's the judgment that's fueling your feeling. Avoid sharing judgment. Do not judge, rather state factual observation and ask for what you want. It's a simple conversation. It doesn't have to be hard, and it can actually strengthen trust, which strengthens relationships, which strengthens and makes it for a happier workplace.
All right. And with that, we're going to put a period on this podcast. Thank you very much for joining, Jeff. Always good to see you.
Great to see you too, Raj. Thanks.